Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Drool Tech podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are continuing our conversation on the book, The Anxious Generation, and specifically moving from how social media and technology is just as bad as we were worried about to what we can do about it. And I am going to try to fit this all into one episode, so it'll be exciting. But we're going to try to address specifically how the book addresses what went wrong and what we can do about it in tandem, in those parts. What went wrong and why is there great hope? And then what can we do about it specifically as parents who are busy and we have real lives and our own real problems. And by the way, tech made some of them worse. So, all right, so there's a fire, but like, what can I do, Nathan? That's today's conversation. So let's jump right in. The first part, how did we get here? I'm going to reference specifically Haidt's progression through the book of The Anxious Generation. If you have not read it, please do. It's a delight. It's got a great audio version if you're into that. It is very accessible, and he is not trying to impress us with his incredibly complex words or simply make it a college course on, psychology and behavioral development. Instead, it's like a history lesson mixed with parental hopeful insights on what caused the problem and what we can do about it. So in looking at how this happened, he goes back to the 1990s and looks at hyperprotective parenting, this idea that the world was becoming more dangerous in parental perceptions. So kids were pulled out of public spaces. They weren't allowed to roam the streets. They weren't allowed to go to public locations and events. Instead, they were drawn more within the cloister of the home. And from there, were put into digital spaces because it was assumed they were more safe. Because, really, like playing original Nintendo, there's no strangers on there. But by 2000, the internet had caught up and there were now strangers on that computer or playing that game. And then by 2012, that's when social media made the switch from connecting us with people to getting us to compete with people. We now have likes and we have followers and there's money involved and fame and influence and a lot of other hooks for behavioral training that they wanted eyes on screen. So things like infinite feed, where there is no bottom to break this focus that you're giving the screen. You keep scrolling and it keeps giving you more. Swipe to refresh, which gives you, I'm bored and I'm done, but maybe it'll give me more. It's based directly off a slot machine. And again, the feedback of simply notifying you that someone commented on a picture you liked, someone commented on the same picture you commented on, someone commented on what you posted. That is a very powerful behavioral loop because we are designed to be relational. We care about that. Even if we tell ourselves we don't, we do. And every time we get one of those little feedback pieces, it makes us more likely to repeat it. So that's how we got stuck in 2012 then is when we see the anxiety and the mental health decline. So anxiety increase in teens and the mental health decline of teens. 2012, and it progresses until modern day to the point where in 2022, 2 out of 3 teenage girls in America said they had experienced in the last month prolonged bouts of sadness and depression. 1 in 3 boys, it's not as bad for boys based on social media, but they are getting this rising sense. Another survey showed that more kids today say that they agree with the statement, I don't feel like my life is useful. That is directly causal from introduction to the internet and introduction to social media. Again, there's a whole book written on this, so I'm not going to run you through all of that, but that's the arc of the bad news. Then he brings us to, okay, but what's the good news? And the good news is your children are not broken. These children are not somehow a defective batch and we have to just wait for the next group to grow up. There are things we can do today, and that focuses specifically on his work, Jonathan Haidt's work in his book, Coddling of the American Mind. And I'll read this. This is out of page 74 under the section, Kids Are Anti-Fragile. And anti-fragile is this idea that your child is not a glass cup or chalice that needs to be protected. And they're not just strong in that if you had something made out of metal that it doesn't break, it's actually that getting knocked over, that getting bumped into, that getting the stress of life makes your child stronger. And this is not some kind of He-Man or machoism the conversation piece, which I feel like does come to the forefront when people are trying to say these words. It comes off a little bit like, well, you should just be tougher and bootstraps and American way and all that stuff. That's not what he's saying. He is saying science shows us, parental experience shows us, biology shows us that humans need stress, much like many of our other created items do. And the example he gives us from the Biome 2, actually. So Biome 2 was an attempt to make a self-sustaining living space that you could use on like the moon or Mars. And so all of your air should come from there, all your water, everything you need for survival should come from this completely enclosed environment. And they tried to grow trees. And I'll read this part. Let's see. There was a great deal learned from the multiple failures. For instance, many of the trees they planted to create a rainforest ecosystem grew rapidly, but then fell over before reaching maturity. The designers had not realized that young trees need wind to grow properly. When the wind blows, it bends the tree, which tugs at the roots on the windward side and compresses the wood on the other side. So then the tree goes on to make stronger wood on the backside, the side getting blown into, now bolsters that wood and actually changes the structure of the wood. And then on the side that is closest to where the wind is blowing from, the roots grow stronger and they dig deeper into the ground. And then later he says, stress wood is a perfect metaphor for children who also need to experience frequent stressors in order to become strong adults. This is key for this conversation. Our children need stress. They don't need anxiety. Anxiety is when your body is experiencing survival stress, but all the time. It constantly thinks it's in danger of having someone post something mean about them, in danger of not knowing where the threats are, in danger of missing out on social priorities and being left behind or downgraded because of it, in danger of people finding out secrets and posting them, in danger of being deepfaked, in danger of constantly having your reputation and your brand and your friendships and your future on the line in a world you're not in control of. That can cause anxiety. That's not good. We're talking stress. Stress is the unknown and the struggle to overcome an obstacle that is surmountable. It's something you can overcome. They are achievable, but it's going to take work. And yeah, you might get hurt in the process, but you're not going to die, right? We want to limit that. That's the job of a parent, that is to allow the proper amount of stress. And in this, he specifically goes on to define anti-fragile and say probably the perfect example is the way he says it, of an anti-fragile system is our immune system. If you have an immune system that never experiences germs, you don't have an effective immune system. Like, you've got skin, but that's it. Like, once something gets past your skin, you're going to get sick. But if you have a child who's constantly putting things in his or her mouth, who is constantly playing in dirt, who's around animals, who's around dust and pollen and funk, then you have a child who's going to have a robust immune system. Yeah, those teachers out there, you know what I'm talking about. You had your first week back at school and you are sick from September 5th or 6th till October 1st. And then the rest of the year, you do pretty good. But you had a whole summer off and those kids picked up a lot of germs. Now you come back and there's just so many boogers. And then your body catches up and you're strong again. That is the idea of an anti-fragile system. And that's what we see with children. So we know then that digital spaces don't do that. We talked last time about real world versus virtual world. And the basic idea is that real world experiences need to be embodied. They need to be synchronous, happening at the same time and taking turns. They need to be communicating one-to-one or one-to-few, one to several. And then they need to have a high barrier of entry. There needs to be a cost to join and a cost for getting kicked out so that you want to repair and that you belong to a community of individuals that are relational now by either requirement because, well, we're all here, so we fear loss, or you belong because of the common interest that you have, and there's a bonding and sharing that shared experience. So with that idea then, to bring that all into how do we get into the anti-fragile piece, we give them experiences that allow them to experience a certain amount of risk and then to build in those relationships to become emotionally healthful, because this isn't what the digital spaces allow us to do. So let's go into the digital space. In that virtual world, digital space, then, if it's not real world, it's virtual. It provides a lot of the similar, what would I say? Sorry, my brain just went blank. Oh, it provides a lot of the same look of, like, I can hang out with people and I can have an experience and we can do something together, but there's none of the risk. So while you might experience anxiety, you don't actually experience the real world stress because there's no actual risk to you. An example would be playing a video game. You can go and have combat, but your body experiences none of the hormones and the exercise and the body mechanics. It's not an embodied experience. You're experiencing someone avatar. And even if you feel the adrenaline of that experience and the reward of that experience, it came with no investment. And that then makes a disposable experience. You are a disposable relationship. That squad can just replace you when you're inconvenient. And your victories were disposable. They just simply are replaced by the next thing. You didn't grow from that. You didn't learn from that. Are there ways to improve that? Yes. He specifically points out social platforms that are communicative and synchronous. So something like a Zoom or a Teams meeting, if you're calling a grandma or grandpa, those can be valuable building on an existing relationship, but they can't replace it. You need to know that person in real life. So that being said, how then do we help our children experience healthy stress? Really, he points out a few ways, and I'm going to go, to the back of the book to make sure I get these right. He specifically points out that the first thing we need to do is give our children real world opportunities to be involved. So we need to give our children real world stresses like opportunities to serve their family. 6-year-olds can clear a table or set it. 6-year-olds can help weed a garden. And the goal is not free labor. The goal is showing your child that they can influence their environment and they can support the family, that they are needed. He actually goes so far as, simple things like practice letting your child play out of line of sight. Maybe it's at a park, maybe it's at a friend's house, maybe it's just at your home and you let them go in the other room. But this can be a stressful point in finding that healthful balance. Maybe you let them go play in the backyard when you're not there, or even in your front yard. We have a road in our front yard that's not a drive-through street. So we are practicing in real time. We applied this immediately. In fact, we applied it so immediately that yesterday the boys had piano. We let them ride their bikes to the piano teacher, and it's technically only like 3 blocks away, but you have to go like 3 blocks to get around our block because you can't go through our fence. Our HOA put in giant concrete barriers for fences. So we used to have a gate. They can't do that. So they go all the way around. And then for the 8-year-old, I did put a little ladder up and made sure he checked because there's one really busy road they have to cross. They've crossed it with us. We understand they have shown themselves responsible in doing little things like when we ask them to do something, they can do it safely. And when they play out in our front yard and a car approaches, they know how to get themselves out of the road. So they have basic survival skills that they've learned in this environment. We're not just throwing them across busy roads. But I watched to make sure Henry checked both ways. And then once he made it, I popped down over the fence and let him do his thing. And it's another 2 blocks to the teacher's house. And at the end of lessons, he just biked himself back. It was daylight. It's not raining. It was a reasonable distance in a place they were familiar with. So I did check my boxes. But the fact that some of us hear that and our immediate thought is like, that feels like neglect. That feels like poor parenting is exactly what he's talking about. We need to, first in our family, build levels of trust where our child is investing in our family and showing value, and we are allowing our child to do that. And then the second thing is we need to normalize children outside. He has a horrifying story, but a story of a woman who was working middle of the day during a break, and her daughter was spending time, a 9-year-old daughter was spending time on a laptop. But eventually the laptop isn't an option. It gets stolen. So she goes, you know what? I'm going to be at work, but down the street, there's a public park. Go play with the other kids. And while there, mom asks, hey, where's your mom? She goes, oh, she's working. Police are called. Mom is reported and arrested for child neglect. Now, doesn't get charged. Charges are dropped. But the fact is that our society is not comfortable with children being in public spaces without adult supervision. And that's something we have to talk about. First of all, our concern is safety. There's going to be an unsafe adult who's going to take that child. Like, that's our spot as adults. Like, that we can do that. We can intervene. If a child is screaming that this isn't their adult, we can step in and lovingly be a safety net for other people's kids. The second piece of that is that is so rare. And it is so infrequent that punishing the other 99.5% of children to not allow them to have the regular stresses that develop them relationally and emotionally and physically, to punish them on account of the rare opportunity when public adults could intervene and stop the negative thing from happening. We instead opt to, well, I just won't let my child have those experiences. That is not a safe option. And the book is very loving and clear that how important the stress is, that it is worth the calculated risks. I'm not saying that flippantly. I'm not saying I want that to happen to my children. I'm saying that this week, I believe it so firmly, and the conversation that Hyde has is so clear, that we need stress, that our children need those healthy stresses. Was it stressful for Henry to bike himself 6 blocks to get to piano lessons? Yeah, but it's also good. And by the time he gets home, he's done something independently. He now trusts himself more. And I've seen him do it. I trust him more. I thought he could do it, but he's now physically done it. He's earned a level of trust as an 8-year-old that is impressive. It's great. It's good to know that he's capable of that. And that means I can trust him with other little things. Again, don't throw out a child who's never had any independence and say, go cross busy streets, but maybe begin to take baby steps in that direction and find for your family in this situation where the stress opportunities can begin. So that's the first piece, is child out of line of sight for play. The second piece is free play. How can we allow our children at 6, at 10, at 16, free play, unstructured, unparental supervised play that basically has a couple rules? You're not going to hurt people on purpose. You're going to include others, and you're going to be playing within our reasons and what is available, right? But there needs to be a level of danger involved. And I want to reference this. The levels of danger, are awesome. So 2 researchers, Sandsetter and Kinnair. I'm very cautious in saying names out loud when I've read them because I messed up Twangy's name so bad. But I'm going to go with that's how they look. All right. So 6 types of risky play freedom that we can offer our children. Heights is the first. Let them climb trees. Let them climb walls. Let them climb tall objects. This might be on playgrounds. This might just be in a park, but allowing them to get off the ground. The research basically shows that kids are really good at self-regulating. And when they do get hurt, typically they do their best to mitigate that on their own without mom or dad setting arbitrary limits, without written rules saying, you can only go so many feet off the ground. Can a child get really hurt? Yes, they can. And there is a space for that opportunity. I wouldn't say go toss your 6-month-old into a tree. I'm saying allow your child to climb stuff. That's one of the 6 types of risks they found. Let's see. So it goes heights, speed. So this can be swinging, this can be bikes, this can be rollerblades, this might be whatever, but they need to be able to play with controlling their own speed and the risk that comes inherently with speed. Anna, my wife, has a mark on her bottom lip where she put 2 teeth through her lip. It happened from speed. We all have those stories with our children where they were running too fast, going too fast, got the speed wobbles going down a hill, whatever it might be, and something happened. Is there danger involved? Yes. You're going to need to pick which of these risks to give, but these are options we can offer our children. The third, which I love, is dangerous tools. Hammers, even saws, drills, things that our children can use. Again, you're going to have to make that choice for yourself. I would opt towards hammer before I'd opt towards a saw. I have a nice, if you're looking on YouTube, I've got a beautiful scar on the inside of my thumb and another right on my middle finger from when I was probably between 8 and 12 and wasn't being cautious enough and learned the hard way from these. I didn't die. I only got stitches for one of the 2. And it was a painful experience that then taught me on the first with the saw, don't cut a small tree that's bent over because another tree's already been felled on it or felled on it. Anyway, another tree's laying on it. It was bent, so it was bowed, and I was cutting it, and the saw slipped out and then ran down the curved part of the tree, and I finished my slice onto my thumb, and it was horrific. The other one, I was playing with a knife. Actually, I wasn't supposed to. It was my cousin's, and I had it half open, and it snapped shut on me. And instead of pulling it back open, I pulled my finger out. Whew. Yeah, made me feel alive. So we are going to give them those opportunities. Keep in mind, I'm telling you, dangerous tools can hurt our children, and that is an important risk factor. We had this last year with Owen. He was playing with cans, and you probably know where this is going. He was trying to get a lid off, hand slipped, and sure enough, right down the middle of his thumb. Good looking slice. He got it glued, got it gauzed, and then he went back with his life. We want to allow our children a calculated amount of risk. I don't want my son playing with something that could say take his life. So I'm not going to allow him to just toy around with, say, a firearm, right? That would be or drive my vehicle. He can't see over the dash. So those are going to be inappropriate amounts of risk, but There will come a day where he gets to do both of those, not play with a firearm, but he will be trained on a firearm, and he will know how to use it well and that it's a weapon and how to respect the danger it provides. There's only one thing a firearm is made for, so don't treat it like a toy. It's not. Similarly with a vehicle, this is a 2,000-pound fuel-filled projectile. I expect you to use it appropriately. Right? Like, that's all of these things put together. Dangerous elements. In this case, he suggests fire. Depending where you live, please be very, like in the middle of California, maybe don't give your kid fire. We don't want to endanger tens of thousands of people, but there are ways to include dangerous elements that might otherwise not be something they engage. Rough and tumble play. Let them wrestle. Let them run and push and shove. Trampolines are amazing for this because they can fall, and the odds of them whacking their head on something hard is greatly mitigated, especially if you get a modern trampoline. They all come with lovely nets, so the days of your friend double bouncing you off onto your noggin on the ground are over. You don't have to dig your trampoline into the ground anymore to avoid damage. And then disappearing, this idea that your child can wander, get separated, get out of sight, hide, and that this is appropriate within space. Yes, you want rules, and hey, if I call for you, please make sure you come. Maybe there's danger, maybe we just need to go, but I need to know that you're going to run to me when I shout your name. So having that opportunity, knowing your child is trustworthy and old enough to be responsible with that. But there are limits to which we can give them that, right? And we can allow them to build that responsibility. If that made you sweat a little to hear those 6, again, I'll just reread them. The 6 types of risky play freedom. There are heights, speed, dangerous tools, dangerous elements, rough and tumble play, and then disappearing, hiding, being out of line of sight, being able to wander off and experience physical and visual separation. Those are things we can do for our children starting at a young age. When it gets to older ages, though, so you're like, all right, this is all well and good, but like I've got a 16-year-old. Like I understand that. And that is actually a very real part of this. He breaks it into 13 to 18 years old. What can we do? Basically, it's focus on more and better real world experiences. So the main concern for our children with screen time and tech activities isn't that this tech is going to necessarily rot their brains. It's mainly, other than a few of the Drool Tech things, video games and pornography we talked about last time, and then social media for girls. Those ones are negative in the way they're designed right now and have a negative impact. But one of the major impacts they have on our children is the opportunity cost. That an hour spent on social media is an hour away from filling those needs with real world people. And you would be better with 1, 2, or 3 real world humans for an hour than you are with 100, 200, 300 digital humans. The embodied experience, the synchronous communication, the emotional exchange, the high level of entry, the amount of work it takes to see and be with another person is so critical and so important for developing our children into who they will become. So more and better real world experiences, replacing some of the negative tech time with those real world high quality opportunities is great. So finding a person to hang out with, selecting a specific time when they can use tech for their enjoyment or to participate in whatever digital spaces your family has approved is important. The second is going to be building hedges, making sure that you have some kind of family safety set up, not to spy on your child. If you feel like you have to read every one of your child's messages, your child hasn't earned the trust to be in that digital space. But assuming your child is in that digital space and they're showing themselves as healthful and ready to be there, then something like bark. When something goes wrong, you're not responding in anger or retribution. You're responding in love and grace and saying, all right, so what happened? How can I help? And what needs to happen now? Do we need to remove this and give you some space away? It's a month to reset a brain that's miscalibrated, that's beginning to think that the pace of the virtual world is the pace the real world needs to operate at, rather than this is the real world and I go to the virtual world and I can tell when life starts to speed up on me, when I start to get anxious. I can tell when relationships start to become unhealthy, or I'm going back to the space because I want to feel good rather than because I already feel good, right? I'm playing games because I need to be okay, not because I am okay, would be an example from my own life. And then third and finally, with those older kiddos, so the first is we're going to be, what did I say? I actually forgot. Oh yeah, more and better real world experiences, limiting the opportunity cost of being in digital spaces. We don't want our gaming to be taken away from our fun in real life, or social media take away from real life friends. The second is we're going to be improving their opportunities. Oh man, I actually forgot what the second one was already. But the third one is we're going to be relying on our children more. Include them in the family with real world responsibilities. For an older kid, this might mean, hey, you're going to get your brother or sister ready for school and you're going to drive him or her to school. You're going to make them breakfast. You're going to get her dressed. Like you are going to do the responsible part of this family because you can. And it's going to show you that you can. And when maybe the first thing is you just cook breakfast and then it progresses. But it is not about, again, it's not about free labor. It's not about getting your child to let you spend your time on the internet because you don't want to get up and do things. It's because you want to build and instill in your child this reality that you're a full-blown human being who's a part of this family, who can give real-world value to our family. So again, in our family, that looks like allowing a little more independent time at home. Where what can I do? Well, I'm going to leave you inside and I'm going to go outside now and work. Now, I'm not leaving you on a computer to do that 10-year-old son of mine, but you can stay inside and I'm going to go out and work. Right? Okay, well now I'm going to go to the neighbor's house and you can stay in here. Those little chances, maybe that's not where your family is with comfort, but allowing that, again, that's visual separation, that's independence. And with the older kids, that independence to now someone else depends on you. And that's an important part of this book, of building that stress of someone relying on you is about as adulting as you get. That's the scariest part of being a parent, right? It's not that we don't have all the answers. It's we don't have all the answers. And there's someone else that matters for. Like, it was fine when I didn't have answers and it was just me. Like, whatever, I'll figure it out. But like, oh, I got people. And you're probably listening to this because you're terrified of being in a tech world, being outpaced, feeling stressed, and just not knowing what the answers are. And my hope in this conversation is that you are now equipped to at least begin the conversation. Recognize that this is a real journey your child is on, and one of the major dangers of our technology is the opportunity cost away from real life stress, and the fact that it replaces that real life stress with rewards that have no cost. So therefore, there's no stress making our roots dig deeper or making the wood of the tree stronger and more dense and more capable of bearing the weight of future burdens. That's what we want for our kiddos. That's why there's those 6 types of stress we can give our kids. It's why we allow them starting at 6 and 8 to participate, even poorly. Like, they're not going to probably set the table right. They're probably not going to do that job quite as well. We were laying bark this week. I had both my boys jump in. One is more natural at the working and the helping than the other one. One of them is really good at looking busy. And you got to keep a good eye. We call it shamming. And he's a pretty stellar shammer. He's got that next level, like looking busy. And then you watch him for a minute. And you're like, that's odd. That pile of beauty bark hasn't moved anywhere in the last 5 minutes, but he's been working diligently at it. That's an important, well, I guess they're both technically life skills, but one of them is an admirable life skill that I want to see him grow in, being the opportunity to become a better worker, exert his effort to bring something into control and into beauty. And the other one is, that's not so admirable, son. Like, let's see what we can do about not pretending to work and lying with our actions, even though we're not. You didn't tell me you were working, but you kind of did. And let's talk about what would God say about our best efforts and about doing everything for his glory and not just for getting dad off your back. Those are opportunities, even if the bark isn't laid as perfectly as it could be. They are important opportunities, not for quote unquote bootstrapping and building character, but for building young people who have experienced stress, know how to bear it, and are learning ways to both cope with it and then add more responsibilities. So we're not just raising children, we're actually raising adults, and specifically young people who know what it means to have joy in the real world, to be mentally healthful, and then are able to experience awe. And I think that, as our last piece of this conversation, is what's most important. When we experience the real world in its stressful capacities, in its full opportunity to bring out the character that God is putting into us and the service that he's calling us into, to be part of bringing his kingdom, to see his kingdom come and his will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. We have the opportunity to experience awe. It's very difficult when my calibration for enjoyment is set to digital virtual world, to experience amazement and wonder and surprise at this world, at jokes, at relationships, at sunrises, sunsets, nature. All that stuff can be much more difficult to appreciate if I'm calibrated to the digital space. We want our children to experience awe in this. In closing, I might have said that 2 or 3 times. I apologize. I just get so excited about this, but real closing. Had a conversation yesterday with a young man. He's 20. And he said, you know what? I recently have, here's why I'm going to tell you this. Gen Z, if you think that something like the anxious generation is going to like make Gen Zers or young people feel bad, please don't be worried. They actually know this is happening, and what they want is solutions and relationship to see it improve. So this 20-year-old said, you know what? I've deleted these 2 social media apps off my phone. I've made the thing grayscale because I don't like what I'm seeing happen in me with this. And he wasn't referencing any specific, moral wrong. He's just like, I don't like who I'm becoming. And the specific example he gave me when I asked was, he goes, I can't tell a story. He's like, none of my friends can tell a story. We don't know how to spin a good yarn. We appreciate a good story. We know funny people like comedians. We know great storytellers and the YouTube channels that can do that, but we don't do it. We simply ingest it, and then we move on with our lives. He's like, I can't string a story together that's interesting. I can be factual. He's like, I don't have a single friend that can do that either. And that's a goal of mine. He's like, I'm reading stories, I'm talking to people, and I want to learn to tell a good story. And I think that is the kind of thing we want for our children, the opportunity to experience the creative process that God has designed us for, to make a plan regarding the future and to act on it beyond, I'm going to have this job, I'm going to make this much money, I'm going to accomplish needs, check, 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 done. But like the joy and the wonder and the beauty that is just being in a world God made, even a broken one, that still reflects his goodness and his graciousness and his loving kindness. So I hope this is encouraging. If it was, share it with somebody. Go find The Anxious Generation on Audible, on Amazon, wherever. I don't make any money, by the way, for this. This is not promoted. This is just something I read, finished it very quickly. I tabbed it again. If you're on the YouTubes, like this is my copy of the book with all the tabs. I gave away 10 copies of the book today to people in town, where I went through and tabbed and underlined and then gave it to 7 administrators in local schools. I gave it to local pastors. And the idea is this is going to be foundational for the future conversation on tech. It isn't the only conversation we need, but it puts everything in a box that's tight enough that we can now begin to apply it to our children in loving and hope-focused ways, not just screaming that there's smoke. There must be a fire somewhere, but I see the fire. I see my children being manipulated. I see my children missing out on real-world opportunities. I see the reset is incorrect, and I want to see health brought, and now I know how to do that. So share it with somebody, read the book, engage this conversation with your young people, and then write me any questions you've got. Nathan@gospeltech.net. Also on social media at Love God Use Tech, and on YouTube at the same Love God Use Tech. Or you can look up Gospel Tech and I'll be on there. And then, join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.